Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. I did a poll about a week ago about the contents that y'all would like to see from me. So some of you voted for LPN school advice. I'm just going to go ahead and answer your questions and then also provide the tips that helped me pass nursing school. I also have a video that I shared with y'all, I think it was last month, how to be successful in nursing school. I'm going to leave the link to that video because I'm going to be including some of the same tips that I left on there. So the first question I was asked is, can you break down the nursing classes you took and how to manage to pass those classes? So I'm going to post a little screenshot of the classes that I was taking. It was pretty much med surge, pharmacology, nursing fundamentals, and I'll just post a picture of it. Okay. We had 4 instructors. One instructor taught maternity, the other taught mental health and pharmacology. The other one was strictly fundamentals of nursing. So I'm going to start first with my fundamentals instructor. She was basically by the book. So we come into class and she taught us whatever was in the book, whatever chapter or sections we're covering. She required that we brought books with us so that we can follow along with her teachings. So that required either you have a highlighter to highlight the content that she was going to go over from the book or somewhere to jot down your notes. I am a pen and paper girl, so I had a 3-subject notebook where I would just write my notes down for each topic that we were covering in class. So that instructor required you to come to class with your textbook and write down the notes, and she was very good at letting us know all the important points that were needed for the exam or the quiz or just in general for us. And so when it came to studying her material, it was pretty much going over my class notes or any concepts that she went over specifically or stressed about. So for pharmacology and mental health, our instructor was very much so PowerPoint based. So we either had an option to print out our own PowerPoint notes, or she would put them up, go over lecture, stress any important medications or any important points that she wanted us to know about. I would print out my PowerPoints, jot down any extra notes, anything that she did not include in her PowerPoints, I would include them with my own notes. For pharmacology, I am not a flashcard girl. I'm just not. It's always had this fear of like losing a card or just not having everything that I need. So because of that, I would just put like 2 to 3 different medications on a sheet of paper and write down anything that was important, the class of the medication, the side effects, what it's for, whatever information that I needed for each medication. And I would just space them out, use front and back, however many pages it took me to cover all the meds or the classes that we were going over for that quiz or that exam. That's how I study. I like to have everything in front of me. So that is just how I study for pharmacology. I never used any flashcards, never bought flashcards. I did have the drug book. It's just a sheet of paper and I wrote down whatever I needed for that medication or for those medications. Mental health, the same thing. She felt comfortable teaching from PowerPoint. So we just printed out the PowerPoints and went over them in class and then, just jot down whatever important information. For maternity, it was a mixture of both PowerPoint and textbook. So we'd bring in our textbooks to class. We'd go over certain sections or topics in class. And then also if she had some supplemental on the PowerPoints, we'd go over those. We had study guides for maternity. She would give us study guides. We'd go over them. For the most part, she was just the type of instructor. If you listened in class and you did your study guides, you were okay during the exam. The questions were never the same as the study guide, but in general, if you learn the information taught in the lecture and on the study guides, you're typically fine. When it came to studying maternity, though, that was actually one of the hardest subjects for me. Even though I did very well, better than all the other subjects, I found that what worked best for me was to rewrite my notes on a piece of paper. I would just rewrite my notes and until I got the information down, especially the concepts or the topics that I wasn't really so confident on. That's what I focused on. Other med surge and other topics like for adults, pediatrics and all that, my instructor went by the book and then also PowerPoints. Same thing. I would write down my notes on the PowerPoints that I would print out, or if we didn't have any PowerPoints provided, I would just write down my notes, whatever she stressed was going to be on the exam or the quiz. I was never one of those people who needed 300,000 different highlighter colors. So it actually does the complete opposite to me. It's very cumbersome to see a bunch of colors on paper for me. So I only stuck with one highlighter, which was most of the time it was the yellow highlighter, one pen, and pencil. So I would write my titles or subtitles in pen, and the rest of the information, whatever information I had coming after that, was in pencil. And if I needed to highlight or underline something with my highlighter, that's when I would come in with my highlighter. But I didn't do all the fancy diagrams and drawings or highlighting. That's just too much for me. So the next question is nursing book recommendations. I would recommend the Saunders NCLEX. I think it's called the Saunders NCLEX prep book. I'm going to post a picture of it. I have the older version. That's why I didn't even bother to show it in this video. So if you watch my video about how to succeed in nursing school, I pretty much explain in detail why I would recommend that book, not only to study for the NCLEX, but also while in nursing school. The book does such a great job at just going over really important points when it comes to like all the topics covered in nursing school. I really appreciate the chapter summaries. There's like a few tests in the back of the book. And then also, if you buy it brand new, it comes with a scratch code that gives you access to like more than 3,000 questions. I wouldn't recommend this, but if you're in a crunch for time, I think that book does a really good job at just like summarizing the key points. Someone else also requested that I share some study tips, and find you one person, at least one. You don't have to partake in the whole study group, but find yourself one person that you recognize in a class who is also as motivated as you are to not only pass the course, but to just really learn their information. And that's going to be really helpful because y'all can feed off of each other. Or, you know, if someone misses something, the other person can usually be there to provide that information. So I would definitely recommend that you find yourself a study buddy. The second tip is to go over your notes as soon as classes are over. It's usually the best time because the information is still fresh in your head. If you have time, just go over your notes. If you can stay a little later or stay in the hallway and just go over the notes that you guys went through, or if you're in a pinch for time, go ahead and do that when you get home or whenever you get that little window to go over your notes. The same day is recommended, but if you're in a crunch for time, do it whenever you can. Also, I made this tip in my previous video, but see if you are allowed to record your lectures, because recording my lectures was actually one of the things that saved me in nursing school. When you're in a car, you can pop your earphones in and listen to your lectures or your notes. I would also go home and read my handwritten notes to myself. And that way, not only have I written them down, but I'm also listening to myself going over those notes. It saved me a great deal of time. Sometimes I had moments where I didn't have enough time to study for a specific quiz or exam. So on my way to school, I would listen to my notes over and over and over. So, and the same person also asked, do we need to read every page? Yes and no. So depending on the material, depending on the class, depending on how much information is needed for you to learn. Okay, rule of thumb is always read the chapter summary first. Well, I want to know the background. I want to know the who, the when, the what, the why before I dive deep into like details. Or I like to have a bird's eye view of whatever material I'm about to cover. I would say this: only read the pages that you find you need a little bit more support or a little bit more information on. Let's say for pharmacology, you're going over beta blockers and you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't memorize all of the side effects, whatever. Go to your book and go straight to the whole section that talks about your beta blockers and read the chapter. The reason I encourage reading page per page when it comes to content that you're unsure of is because when you read the entire thing, you're most likely to retain the information and learn a little bit more than you did if you hadn't read that whole page. I hope it makes sense. So if you guys went over beta blockers in class and you're still unsure and you stayed in class and you asked the instructor to go over and it's still not clicking in your head, go home, go over the class notes, and then reinforce that with the textbook. And hopefully it's going to make more sense to you. But if this is like common sense information to you, you don't really have to read chapter per chapter. When it comes to checkoffs, my best advice is to practice, practice, practice. Okay. If you can recite the steps to whatever you're getting checked off on, you got it. If you're able to practice at home with your children or your loved one, or even with a teddy bear, we got sent home with a cath kit and I practiced it with my teddy bear because who else was I going to practice it on? Your instructor can actually tell the difference between you messing up because you're nervous compared to you messing up because you have no idea what you're doing. Okay. My best bet is to recite it, say it out loud as you're doing this check off. So when it comes to exams or quizzes, I would go home, go over my notes from class, also go over, as I'm also listening to my lectures, I would go over notes, and then I would practice questions. We used ATI in my school, so I would practice questions on ATI just to test my knowledge. And then also we had homework on ATI, so that was extra practice in terms of like answering NCLEX style questions. Here's an extra tip. If you actually plan on furthering your education, C's don't get degrees. C's are not okay. Remember that. It's going to come around and bite you in the behind. If you are just striving to get C's and your plans are actually to continue your education, you are not setting yourself up for success. So try your best to always aim for the highest grade and don't just settle for the minimum. Now, if you plan on stopping wherever at the LPN level and you're for sure certain about it, go ahead. Then C's get degrees and move on with your life. But if you are actually planning on continuing your education, strive for higher than C's. That is my best advice. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comment section. If I missed anything, please share them with everyone else in the comment section. And yeah, remember that of all the hundreds of applicants for this program, they chose you for a reason. That means that you have the capability of passing this program. Just remind yourself that every month, every semester until you graduate. I hope this was helpful to you, and I'll see you guys in my next video.